I'm Sienna. I'm with CS Porter Middle School, Flagship.
I'm Becky. I'm at Washington Middle School.
I'm Scott. I'm at Big Sky High School.
And I'm Emily. I'm right here at Hellgate High School. So the reason why we've got you all here today is we have some desired outcomes that we want you to learn and to gain a greater sense of understanding of things. So a few things is we would like you to gain a greater sense of purpose and a better understanding of Flagship's mission and vision and our programming framework. We want you to get a deeper sense of connection through the development of relationships with Flagship staff and the other instructors. To gain an understanding of your role as an instructor and the responsibilities that you'll have. To get a better understanding of Flagship and school policies to ensure healthy, positive relationships and programming. And finally, to get an understanding of classroom management techniques, including behavior management and student engagement. So there should be some scratch pieces of paper on the table. If you, at any point during this training, have a question and something you want answered and we don't have time to go over it, you can just write it down and then we'll answer them at the end. Okay? Yes. All right, Sienna.
Okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Flagship's history and why we're here. So the mission of Flagship is to enhance the social, academic, cultural, and physical achievement of Missoula's young people by creating opportunities during non-school hours to help them succeed in school and grow to become healthy adults. So in 1995, our program began as a drug and alcohol prevention program, and it started at CS Porter Middle School. And really, we're kind of a disguised prevention program. We have fun with a purpose. So we're giving students activities to do after school rather than going home and maybe engaging in those risky behaviors or going home and just playing video games. So we like to give them something to do after school. And we've been part of 2 national studies that says our program is working. So it's building students' confidence, there's less dropouts, they gain social networks or friends, they have an attachment to school, and the onset of experimenting with drugs and alcohol is at a later age. So your role is really crucial to our program. You're a positive mentor, a positive, healthy adult in these students' lives. And some of our students don't have that, so it's really great to have you around. And so what we're trying to do is increase the positive or the protective factors and decrease those risk factors. So protective factors may be a healthy, positive adult, or it may be attachment to school, or it may be feeling a part of your community. And kind of the risky factors would be maybe not having a supportive parent or dependent on where they're living in the city. Those can all be risk factors. So we're trying to eliminate those and increase protective factors, and that's where you come in, and you're the biggest piece of our program.
So you guys are obviously the most crucial part of our program because you're leading these after-school programs. You're being positive role models for these students. And so what we would like you to do in order to try to get to know each other a little bit better, we'd like you to just turn to someone near you, introduce yourself to them, and you can talk about what you do. Are you a student? Are you a community member? What your vocation is? And then we want you to think about a positive mentor that you've had sometime in your life, preferably in that middle high school age range. And think about what the characteristics of that person were. And we'd like you as a pair to figure out what the characteristics were of that role model and then write them up on this piece of butcher paper over here on the wall. So we're going to try to do this pretty quickly. Just talk to each other, introduce each other, and then think about those characteristics and write them up on the paper. For instance, whenever I was in 5th grade, I had an awesome teacher. She had us do journals in class about books that we had read, and then she would write back to our journals. And I loved the responses that she gave to my journal entries, and I thought the world of her. So for her, I would say she was thoughtful and caring. Okay, and then I write that on the butcher paper. Does that make sense? Any questions? All right, go for it. All right, guys. So I know some people are finishing up over there, which is great, but we just want to keep things moving to maximize our time. So I can see some great characteristics over there: thoughtful, caring, trustworthy, reliable, motivating. And what we would like you to do as Flagship volunteers is just try to channel those qualities in your volunteering. The more enthusiastic and engaged you are, the more excited and engaged these students are going to be in your group. So just keep these characteristics in mind as you're volunteering, and I am confident that you guys will be amazing volunteers and be inspirational and really have an impact in these students' lives. So thank you.
If I could have everybody just open up your Flagship Program Manual to page 4. There you will see the job description of your work with Flagship. We're not going to go through it point by point, but you can see it includes the Flagship mission, the summary of your position, specific duties and tasks, qualifications required, conditions, other pertinent information, and benefits. So make sure you go through and read that on your own time. We're going to skip over that right now and go to the next page, which is responsibilities. So as far as your daily responsibilities, the first thing is to take attendance. Taking attendance is a small task with huge implications. So we track and report all the participation of our students in Flagship as well as our volunteers, because we rely on those statistics to get funding. It's also, I've found, taking attendance is the best way to learn your kids' names when you're first getting started, especially if you have 15 kids in your group. Sometimes it takes a while to get to know everyone's names, but if you take the time to take attendance at the beginning and maybe even do it verbally, that might be a way for not only you to learn the kids' names, but the other kids that are in the group as well. So it's just in order for us to receive and maintain our grants, we have to have this accurate data of who's been in our programs, and so it's very essential that we take care of that right off the bat. Next up is reporting incidents. It says reporting all injuries or destruction of property to the Flagship coordinator is mandatory. You'll be responsible for aiding the coordinator in filling out an accident report form as the primary witness to the incident. The instructor is always required to report to the coordinator immediately after an accident occurs with a student. Okay? Next responsibility is keeping communication open with the coordinator. Flagship coordinator should be utilized as a resource and a support person for all your programs. It's our goal as coordinators to assist you in curriculum development, facilitation skills and problem solving, behavior management, and logistical planning. Please feel free to contact us at any time. We value the time to meet with you and encourage discussion about any concerns. And next up is promptness. Young people need adults to keep them safe and engaged. By being on time, you offer consistency and show your commitment to the students. Due to the ever-changing nature of the Flagship program, it's absolutely necessary to check in with your coordinator daily before your program starts. This will ensure that you've received all the important information to run a successful activity. The other thing that you need to realize is that most of the schools, there's multiple activities going on at the same time. So if everybody shows up at the last minute, it just creates a kind of a chaotic moment for the youth development coordinator. So if you can get there a little bit early, then it's nice if you have a little bit extra time to actually stagger people, check in with them, send them to their room, and move forward in that way. Cleaning up. The Flagship program appreciates the tremendous support of our schools. To guarantee this continued support and access school facilities, we ask that you and the students Thoroughly clean up the areas that you've used in and around the school. If you ever need access to cleaning supplies, please contact the coordinator. Always leave the room in the same condition you found it. Please do not let the students touch the teacher's property. If you need additional supplies for your program, Flagship can provide these. So if you're doing like art projects, those rooms can get really trashed really fast, okay? So, you know, the best thing to do is just to talk to your coordinator and make sure that you have everything that you need to clean the room. The other thing is, if you're running short on supplies, I think the national inclination is to go to the teacher's desk and like start borrowing pens or things like that. Don't do that, because we do really rely on a lot of trust with the teachers for them to let us use their rooms, and we don't want to get a reputation as people that have been in rooms where things are missing afterwards, even if it's small things like pens and pencils. Tracking hours. As I said before, we track the hours of both participants and you as volunteers, so we need that information for our grants. And then modeling behavior, which we've kind of touched on already. Part of the Flagship's program goals to normalize positive behavior across the age spectrum. Please recognize your role in young people's lives and consider how your actions affect them.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about etiquette with students. I'm going to read you guys some scenarios. I want to see a thumbs up if you agree or you think that it's appropriate for you to do that, and a thumbs down if you disagree and you don't think it's appropriate, it's inappropriate, okay? A student has been really disruptive. You take her away from the class and into an empty classroom where it's quiet. You shut the door so no one can disrupt the conversation. Okay, most of you guys have the thumbs down. So can someone tell me why you have a thumbs down? Yeah.
Should never be one-on-one with a child.
So never one-on-one with a child, why is that?
Because of accusations can be made.
Yes, exactly. So it's to keep you guys safe. We don't know what's going on, so we just need to keep you guys safe. So it's totally okay though if someone's acting out, if I pull them aside and I like go to the microwave over there, or I kind of step out in the hall. That's totally fine, just don't close the door. Okay, Chris, the student in class, has really connected with you, and he asks for your phone number. He says that you're the only one he can talk to. Do you give him a phone number? Yes, no? Okay, someone tell me why you have that now.
It's like breaching a student-teacher relationship.
Yeah, so boundaries, for sure. What else? Why else may that not be appropriate?
Just like staying professional and making sure that they really understand the difference between like you're not just their friend, you're like an adult.
Great. Yeah, staying professional. It also is that closed door thing. So no one knows what you're saying to the student if the student's the only one on the other line. You've really bonded with Amanda, a student in class. At the end of term, you give Amanda a gift and a note saying that she is amazing. I see you have a yes. What, did you have a question?
Depends on the gift.
Okay, depends on the gift.
You're looking at a gift you're looking at a bookstore or something, a piece of clothing, it's like, yeah.
Okay. You had thumbs up. Why so?
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Okay.
I think it does depend on the gift.
Okay, depends on the gift.
Yeah, if you just give them all the gift, it's not a big deal.
You said if you give like all the
All
students
of the
a gift.
students, yeah.
Okay. Why did someone have a thumbs down? Yeah.
Because everyone's gonna feel left out if one person gets
Yeah. Yeah, I know I would. And it goes over that like kind of personal boundary, professional boundary. So we say no on the gifts unless you want to give a gift to all the students. But we still like you to check in with the coordinator because we don't want you to spend your own money, and we also just kind of want to know what's going home with the students, so we're aware. But totally, like, if you guys want to write a handwritten note to all the students, run it by us and we can get that done. All right, ready? You're super attracted to Karen, the other volunteer that you're working with. Karen is in high school at Sentinel, and you're a junior in college. I hope I see these. Yeah, so we have high school volunteers as well as college volunteers, and you really you can't sometimes tell the difference. So you're here to be with our kids, not to date, right? So refrain from dating your co-facilitator. You tell the students that if they don't start behaving, then you're gonna go get the principal and call their parents. Look at your face. Why do you have that face and that?
Because you're threatening kids.
Threatening kids, okay. So you say no. Does anyone say yes?
If it's severe enough where they're not listening to you at all, they're all chaotic, then I think that would be an appropriate response. But if it's something you can handle, then not threatening until it's a last resort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I kind of say this is okay if you follow through. Okay, and hopefully you're not going to take it to that extreme, and hopefully you won't have a kid that will be that extreme, but potentially you could have a student where you've given him multiple warnings or her multiple warnings, and then you say, hey, you know, I'm going to go get the principal and we're going to have to call your parents. And that's a totally appropriate consequence. You would probably come to the coordinator first, but that's okay if you follow through, because what happens if you don't follow through? What?
They'll walk all over you.
Walk all over you. They will. Yeah, for sure. They won't trust you. They won't think you're gonna follow through. So definitely follow through on your consequences, even if it's a positive consequence too. So if it's, hey, if we run a mile today, if you're in like a running club or a football club or something, if we run a mile today, I'll let you guys have 10 minutes at the end of class for free time or whatever. Then you need to follow through on that if everyone's running a mile. Got it? The students are busy working, and you start talking to the other volunteer about the awesome party you went to on Saturday. Okay. Yeah, so no, why do people say no?
We don't want to expose them to risky behavior.
Okay, you don't want to expose them to risky behavior. Great. So they can hear everything too. So even if you're just like talking to your co-facilitator, like whispering or anything like that, they can hear everything. So leave that conversation to after Flagship. Okay. Tom is absolutely ridiculous. He's always so loud. So you make some sarcastic remark about how quiet he is, and maybe he'll finally get the picture. Okay, what? Shout out why you guys are saying no. I don't see any okays.
Because most of the kids we're going to be working with are still concrete thinkers. They're not really going to deal well with sarcasm.
Great, yes. Like even into high school, some students don't understand sarcasm, and some students internalize things. So yeah, just leave the sarcasm out. I think we're all very sarcastic as coordinators. So we've learned our lesson. I one time had a student where I said something and she was like, Sienna, you are so mean. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean it. Like, I'm so sorry, but it's just the way they think. Sarah has had a tough home life. She says she really wants to tell you something about her dad, and she promises that you won't tell.
She asks you to promise not to tell?
Yeah, she asks you, so you would promise not to tell. Is that good or no? Yeah.
At the very least, you should mention you're legally required to tell some things, and that you should, regardless of that, you may have to
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that for sure. And yeah, so you're not promising to tell that you, oh my gosh, I got mixed up. So you're not promising not to tell. Because you do have to, so you guys are mandated reporters, so you do have to talk to us about it at least. And then I think Becky's going to go over kind of the process of if someone does report something to you and kind of those steps, but we're definitely here to support you and to help you if that does happen. So we'll talk about that later, but yeah, don't promise that you won't tell. James is always sticking around after class. When you ask him why, he says that he doesn't have a ride home, so you offer him a ride because his house is on your way. Why not? Yeah, so that's the closed door thing again. Also, we just don't want you to be liable for that. If you have a student that's always being picked up late, let us know. We would probably know anyways, but just let us know and we can try to figure out what's going on and how we can get them home. There's a small student in your class. You tell, or you want Tara to feel special, so you give her a piggyback ride to the bus. No. So why not? What?
Safety advocate?
Yeah, so safety, definitely. What else?
Like respect our students' space and that touching.
Okay, so the touching, yes, so personal space and touching. Yeah, Emily's gonna go over that a little bit. And then one last one, a student is complaining of a headache and you have an aspirin in your pocket, so you give it to them. Okay, you guys figured it out. So why is that not good? It's drugs. Yeah, no, but we really can't give any sort of medication to students. We can't even give them cough drops. So that all has to be done, like parents would have to administer that. So if you do have a student complaining of a headache, bring them down to our office and we'll figure out what we can do for them there or call home if we need.
Okay, for the next bit, we're going to talk a little bit about safe touch, and I would like a volunteer from the audience. All right, right there. Hand up first. Come on over. Okay, so there's some things that are okay, like high fives, fist bumps, which are not in your book, but they are okay, and handshakes. There's things that are not okay that you might are kind of on the border. There's no patting on the back. A side hug is okay, like shoulder touching, but you don't want to stay forward. You don't want to come up and be like, you know, on the back. It's not good. Because the child can't see what you're doing. So basically, touch needs to be where the student has control over it and they can see. The hug thing, you're going to have some students that are going to want to come up and give you a hug. Can you start over there and come try to give me a frontal hug here? So you need to do one of these. Side hug. Did you see that? Whoa. Shoulder to shoulder. So it's a great way to make the child still feel special. You feel special?
Yeah, I feel pretty special.
Yeah. Without, violating that boundary there. There's other things that aren't okay, like tickling, wrestling, the piggyback rides, sitting on laps, that kind of stuff. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hand for a volunteer there. So basically, nothing that's going to immobilize the student's movement. That's a big no-no.
And mine is substance use. So obviously, all schools are drug-free workplaces. So make sure that you're not using any substances before or during your flagship volunteering period. And then also no tobacco use in the presence of children, okay? And even be careful about tobacco use right before you come to flagship because they're gonna smell the smoke on your clothing, and We just want you to be the most positive role models that you can be, okay? So any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward. All right.
The two scenarios that you're most likely to run into as far as talking to youth about drugs and alcohol are that you have a student who's glorifying the use of drugs or alcohol in your group, and that's probably more common maybe with junior high kids, maybe high school. I don't know. I haven't had much problem with it at Big Sky, but I know that I have an 8th grader, so I know that sometimes the stories make it back to my house where it's like, Bobby said he drank 4 beers this weekend, you know? So, I mean, that's where they're at in their development. Those stories spread like wildfire. They may make it to your classroom. So, what would you do if you had somebody that was telling stories like that in your group? Anybody have any ideas?
You can call them out. I mean,
You can call them out. I think the best way to do it, though, is not to call them out in front of the whole group. Sometimes it works best just to take some time to pull them aside and just say, you know what, that's not really an appropriate conversation for us to be having at the time that you're here with us, and I appreciate it if it didn't come up again, you know. I think, at least in my experience with elementary and junior high, I think we have calling them out on our PowerPoint here somewhere, but I think just pulling them aside usually works best. It kind of saves them the embarrassment of being, you know, having done something wrong. The other scenario is students asking you about your experiences with drugs and alcohol, and this is much more common with high school than it is with elementary or junior high. Does anybody want to take a shot about how you would deal with that? No?
Can you like flip it around and ask them why they're asking?
You could do that. You could do that. There's a couple different ways that you can deal with it. But again, I think that the best way to deal with that is just, again, pull them aside and just say, hey, I'm here. I'm working with you as a mentor. It's not an appropriate conversation for us to have, so I'd appreciate it if we didn't have that kind of question coming up. So, okay. Here it also says, let your coordinator know if you have significant conversations about these topics with kids. So if it's something that's coming up all the time with the kid, there might be a reason for it. And that's where you start to maybe at some point get into what we're going to talk about later is some reportable information. The worst case scenario that I had was I had a student that reported his mom was running a meth lab in his house, and that's definitely a significant conversation, okay, and reportable as well, because he wasn't real happy about that, and as it turned out, she was. So I think you'll probably know when you've reached that point that it's reportable, but if you're in a gray area and you're not sure, just talk to your youth development coordinator and they will deal with it appropriately.
And I think, can I add to that, Scott? I think the biggest thing is don't disclose. So sometimes we think like, oh, we had a horrible experience with alcohol and, you know, we were in the hospital and had our stomachs pumped or whatever. Don't go there. Just don't disclose, even if it's supposed to be a story to be on the negative. Just because they're going to think, well, they did it and they're still alive even if they went to the hospital, right? So we just don't want to go there, so don't disclose.
Oh, okay. Well, not
Yeah.
high school. I mean, just like.
Dress code. Moving on from drugs to dress. So, let's see. There's a little example here. Who can tell me what is wrong with this photo? Why would you not wear this to school? Oh, someone's got it. What is it?
Is it the Kettle House hat?
Yes. So, Kettle House. Brewery, not appropriate. So you want to be really, really careful whenever you have logos or branding on your clothes. Yeah?
What about water bottles? All of mine have got some hydro flasks.
Don't bring them. Nice sticker over where the logo is. You want to be really careful that you're not having any branding that has to do with drugs or alcohol. You got one right there.
Yeah,
I'm going to point you out.
I know.
Yeah.
How about the like Glove is like Metal House or brewery sponsored events and you have a shirt and you know a lot of shirts like randomly will put their logos on the back of the shirt. I'm sure even high schools like are those not even allowed?
They
They sponsored like a
They
running
will
event?
not sponsor high school. Same with footwear. Please wear appropriate footwear for the activity that you're doing. So if you are going out hiking or on a run, wear appropriate footwear. I would say no high heels at all because especially when you have younger students, you may kind of be chasing after them. So you want to, for the ladies, watch out for the heels. And for hats. Hats are not allowed in school at the middle school. You can wear them at the high schools. But for middle school, you cannot wear hats. If you are out, like the skate park was something that came up, then it'd be appropriate. Or if you're outside and you need some sun cover, then it's appropriate. You just can't wear them in the school at middle school. But at the high school level, hats are okay. Just, you know, watch that branding on the hat and what you're representing. Okay, any other questions on that then? To cell phone use?
Okay, I think that's me, and that's just don't use your cell phone while in Flagship. So we don't want you texting your friends or making personal phone calls. Perfect. I'm just joking. It's totally fine. I've done that before. So yeah, just no cell phones. Keep them on silent. If you do need to contact us, you can use your cell phone. So let's say you're in a classroom and there's only one facilitator and you need scissors because you forgot them or you didn't realize you needed them, you can give us a call. And then obviously in emergencies, you're gonna use your phone. That's totally fine. Any questions about that?
All right, so the next item is reportable information, and we mentioned this briefly before. So anytime a student discloses any information about neglect or abuse, we are all required to report that. So you have to report it to your coordinator, and then as coordinators, we have to call the hotline, the Child Protective Services hotline. Sometimes we might ask you to also call if you feel comfortable doing that. But ultimately, you know, you have to share that information at the very least just with your coordinator. Honestly, this doesn't happen. I don't think it's ever happened with volunteers. Coordinators, or students have disclosed to the coordinators, but it hasn't happened with volunteers, and hopefully it won't. So there are some steps, though, to how to be a good listener if a student does choose to disclose, because if they're disclosing with you, they obviously respect you as a person. You mean something to them if they're disclosing this information to you. So make sure you listen attentively, let the student just tell their story. Try to be supportive, don't freak out, because if you freak out, that'll make them freak out even more. And they're already in a traumatic situation, so they don't need that added stress. And then, you know, you can tell them that you will only tell the people that will keep them safe, but you can't promise not to tell anyone. So just be sure of that whenever you have that conversation, if you would have that conversation. You'd also have to fill out a MCPS and a Flagship incident report as well. So just so that you're aware of that. Okay, any questions about that? And like I said, this has never happened with volunteers before, so it's not something that you really have to worry about. It's just something that we have to make you aware of.
Okay, next up, talking to parents. We encourage frequent, informal but professional conversation with parents. You'll probably see them when they're picking their kids up. When talking to parents, it's important to only discuss details of the day, particularly to their student. If you need to refer to other students, avoid using their names. Begin and end your conversation on a positive note. Parents want to hear good things about their student. If you make them aware of a behavioral issue, please be sure to include the specific problem, behavior, and consequence. And the example is, I enjoy having Sarah in Flagship. She has a great sense of humor. Today, Sarah was having a difficult time paying attention to the directions and was talking out of turn. When I tried to redirect her, she was disrespectful and kept talking. I gave Sarah a warning and she had to sit out the activity for 5 minutes. I know she can be a good listener and a great leader, and know she can make positive choices next week. Okay? Next up, we are going to talk about grounds for termination. To ensure that all students participating in the Flagship program are safe, there are grounds for termination for all Flagship instructors, and you can see these on page 8 of your manual. And that would be a DUI charge, relapse of a drug recovery program, showing up to Flagship under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, violence or a history of violence, assault charges or altercations, domestic violence, corporal punishment towards a child even with parents' permission, sexual harassment or intimidation, which includes language or behavior, theft, vandalism, secret keeping with either the children or their parents, violations of any school policies, or insubordination. So those are it. It's very rare that it happens. It has happened in the past. Someone gets a DUI in the middle of their time with Flagship. Unfortunately, we have to let them go. Okay? And then one more thing here. It says instructors must end all communication with Flagship students after their program session ends. So that means you're not exchanging cell phone numbers, friending them on Facebook and doing private chats. It's kind of like when you're done working with them, you move on. It's okay to say hi to them if you see them at the farmer's market, but we prefer you not to get involved in social media with them. So, good. Ready for a break here?
Okay, so we'll move on. And we'll talk about the importance of mentoring relationships. So, a mentoring relationship can reduce stress in a student's life and help students create a positive outlook on challenges that they may experience. Listening and providing alternative perspectives can present an opportunity for youth to develop a bond while enhancing social skills. So that's great, but how do you do that? So one of the ways that you can create that mentoring relationship, really important to learn the students' names as soon as you can. If you can learn them that first day, that's great. You can play games with them to kind of do some name games. Our coordinator over at Willard gave a really great kind of secret tip, is that if you forget a student's first name, you can say to them, hey, I forgot what your last name was. Can you tell me again? And then you can go on the sheet and find on the attendance sheet and find their last name and be like, oh yeah, thanks Riley.
That's cheating.
It works.
What if you don't have an attendance sheet?
You will have attendance sheets. You might have some students that are dropping in like in tutoring, and then you just got to ask them their name, you know, and you can look at that sheet too and see what they signed in as. But just ask a student's name. And then there's a lot of different name tips that you can use to remember them. But most of you will be working with the same students every day, especially at middle school, so you'll get to know them pretty quick. Another good thing is play activities and games with them. Sometimes at the high school level that, you know, it works a little bit better at middle school, but there are some high schoolers that do like to play some games. So if you have that appropriate activity, there's some things you can do there. You want to create trust with that student, and the way to do that is to show up consistently on time, and they will learn to trust you. They'll see you there every day, and they'll know. At high school, it's a really big deal that you're showing up consistently and at time, because, you know, and middle school too, because the students want to be there and they won't show up if they don't feel like you're not going to, you know, if you're not going to be there, then they won't show up either. So it's really important to be here and be on time, to listen to the students, find out what they're passionate about, find out their hobbies, You know, don't just ask how their day went, but ask a specific example if you can. So, oh, hey, you had a big math test yesterday. How did that go? You know, so ask something specific, and you can do that by finding out what they're interested in. And listen respectfully without judgment. Be sensitive to their circumstances. They may have very, very different lives than you, so just be sensitive to that. And the last thing you can do is to create an environment in which they feel safe. So that's a lot of the stuff we're talking about tonight, is how to be that positive mentor and those behavior management tips, like avoiding the sarcasm thing unless you know that that student understands it. Okay. Yay. So, Sienna, you want to talk a little bit more about these management strategies?
Okay, so just kind of as an intro, all of MCPS or Missoula County Public Schools are an MBI school. Does anyone know what MBI is? Maybe growing up in Montana you would know.
Isn't it like
Somebody over here.
Yeah.
the behavior initiative?
Yes, so it's the Montana Behavior Initiative. And so it really recognizes positive student behavior rather than the negative. So you're really trying to point out the positives that the students are doing, and it's building that positive school climate and culture. So Becky's going to talk about a few behavior management strategies, and then I'll continue.
Okay, so now we're on page 10 of the manual, if you like to follow along, like me. So the first one on there is reward positive behavior, but you want to be really specific in how you do that. So instead of just saying, good job, Sienna, say specifically what Sienna did. So like, hey, Sienna, good job just, paying attention and really focusing on the activity that we're doing right now. So you want to be really specific with your praise and try to pinpoint exactly what they've done, because kids hear good job all the time. Doesn't really matter to them, but if you're specific with your praise, that'll really stick with them, and they'll want to keep doing that for you, okay? So that's the first one. And then the second is motivating your students. So this is great. It's kind of like bribery. So one example that's given here is, the sooner we're all quiet, then the sooner we get to go outside and have free time, okay? So it's a great way to be like, you get what you want out of the situation for the students to be quiet and listening, and then they are also getting rewarded too for their good behavior. And then the third one on the list is make a point. And so if you have two students that are talking all the time, I'm going to say these guys. So you guys are chit-chatting to each other and being obnoxious. And I might go like this. That's my teacher look, okay? Or I might come over and be like, okay, because that's my presence. I'm kind of invading on their little chatting time, all right? So use your body language, use your looks. Try to channel that mom look that your mom gave you growing up, and figure out how to use that to get the behaviors that you want, okay?
So the next one is following through with consequences, and we talked about this already. You just need to follow through with your consequences so they take you seriously and they don't walk all over you. Make your consequences logical. So oftentimes you might find people doing like side conversation, and I'll go up to them. I don't know. I'm like, I'm so far away. Okay, so I maybe go up to them and say, hey guys, we need to be quiet now. If you guys talk again, I'm gonna move you. Okay, so that's a logical consequence because they're talking, right? Maybe a logical consequence of like playing too rough during a football game would be to sitting out for 5 minutes and taking a break. So trying to make those a little bit logical. One that my psych professor told is, if if a student breaks a window, they're going to make enough money to pay back that window or learn how to like replace that window. So you're probably not going to get that extreme, but that kind of gives you that visual of making them logical. Also, if you are having difficulty consistently with a student, check in with your coordinator, because that's when we can maybe step in and do something else. So that could be having a behavior plan, or doing something like that, talking to a counselor to figure out maybe they do have a behavior plan at the school and we can implement it and tweak it to Flagship. So as we were going along these are almost like kind of a step-by-step what you're gonna do. And then if nothing's working, you're gonna have a heart-to-heart with a student and really pull them aside. We talked about obviously not behind a closed door, but you're gonna pull them aside and check in with them and really be in a respectful place when you do this. So you're gonna check in with them. Hey, are you having a rough day today? It seems like you're just a little off. You're not very focused. What's going on? So kind of checking in with them, letting them know that you care about them and you want to make things better for them. And then they're going to express their feelings, allow them to express their feelings back to you. If there were 2 students involved, you could pull them both aside and say, hey guys, what's going on? Why are we fighting? Why are you guys bickering today? Or whatever. What happened today at school that is making you do this? And then also have them explain why that behavior is inappropriate. So, you know, I can't have you guys roughhousing. Why do you think that is? Like, why can we not push and shove on the field? And then ending on a positive note. So, you know, I really like your leadership in this class. I know that you can, you know, follow directions and play safe. Does that make sense? Are there any questions with that? Okay.
All right, so what we're gonna do next, we want you to get into groups of 3, all right? So find 2 other people that you can be in a group of 3 with, and we have these scenarios on pieces of paper, and they're in groups of 3. So you can just...
If you're in a group of 2, that's okay too. Whatever.
Yeah, 2 or 3. And then, listen up really quick. So, read through your scenario, okay? The scenario that you have, you're going to be the instructor in that situation. And then the other 2 people will be the kids, or kid. So figure out, using these behavior management strategies and the top 10 behavior management tips in your manual, how you would address the behavior situation that's on the scenario. Okay, any questions? If you have questions, just raise a hand whenever you're going around. How did the role playing go? Were there any specific scenarios that you guys had any trouble with, or that you'd like to discuss as a group?
No, we didn't. Anyone have a hard time with some of them? Now's your time to talk, because this is a great time to deal with the behavior issues. Yeah.
So we had one where it's a student who is obviously acting aggressive towards other students, but when you try to have that conversation, she refuses to talk to you. So we couldn't really think of anything that would sort of address both issues. Like, we could think of something to address, you know, if she's not being, you know, respectful of other students, or if she doesn't just want to talk to you, but not something that really covers both at the same time.
Well, what was the name of the character in yours?
Amber?
Amber. Did anybody else have the Amber scenario? All right. What did you guys do in that one?
Well, we decided that the best course of action, even though she didn't want to talk, maybe pull her aside and have a heart-to-heart and see if maybe she would open up that away from the other students.
I think that's a good tactic, to kind of pull her aside and take her away from the other students and see if she opens up. What if she continues to not open up? What do you think?
Is that one of those reportable
things you were talking about, maybe reported somebody.
So you could come to
Yeah.
one of the coordinators and we could try to talk to Amber for sure. I think that's probably what I would suggest. If you have a student that's non-compliant and doesn't want to talk, has kind of shut down, then feel free to contact us and let us know. We're in our office or around the school somewhere, so you can always call us and just be like, hey, we got a problem, and then we'll come down and try to help.
And there's a lot of times where you can give students choices as well. So if she doesn't want to participate, find out what she wants to do. So something where they're still in the room with you, but they can color, or you guys have alternate activities that they could be doing. So maybe if she doesn't want to talk and participate in the group, there might be something that would appeal. So you can ask her, And with high school students, I always ask them what I can do for them. So how can I help you out? And then
I think that's across the board, from elementary to high school. Elementary wouldn't tell you, probably wouldn't be able to know what you could do to help, but I think starting in middle school, they can start to recognize those things.
And I think, for you guys, two things that you should always remember is that don't take their behavior personally. Like, they might have had a really rough day before they came to Flagship, and they might just be kind of acting out due to a bunch of other events that happened earlier in the day. It's easy when you're in that situation where you have 15 kids and you have like one or two that are like out of control. It's easy to just kind of want to freak out because you don't know what to do. But just don't take it personally. Just try to act as calmly as possible. And know that we're always there to support you. So you can always give us a call if you need us to help you out. Okay? Any other situations that you had any questions about, or any of the strategies that you kind of have any questions about? Anything with this behavior management piece? Yeah.
I was kind of, mine was kind of confusing. It's like, Henry likes to play hard during sports games, and he tends to be overly aggressive and pushes his kids down, running into them and holding balls. Like, how do you, I know you can be more direct, like, I need you to be like this, but,
So what do you guys think about that one? You have a kid you're in a sports group, they're overly aggressive, and they just kind of keep on being overly aggressive. What would you do in that situation?
Could you give him a warning, and if he continues to be overly aggressive, make him like sit out for a little bit?
Yeah, so warnings are good. Like, be like, hey, if you're not going to follow these rules, you're going to have to sit out for some time and take some time by yourself. That's great. That's really great. Heather, you had something back there? That's what you were going to... Okay, I think that's a great strategy in this situation. Do you guys have...
You could maybe try to give them a leadership role, or a role that's going to kind of wrangle them in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of your sidekick almost, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds like if we're not offering rugby club, they're probably breaking the rules of the game as well. So I think that's another thing too, is that you can follow the same strategy that they would if you were actually officiating a game, is just have them sit out or be substituted for a while and let them cool off a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And setting up rules like that at the beginning, before the aggressive behavior happens, like, be like, okay, we have to be good sports in this club. That's just part of sportsmanlike behavior, is part of the expectation for this group, and kind of setting up those expectations beforehand helps cut off some of that before it even starts, too. All right, any other final questions with behavior management?
Okay, so on page 13, 14, and 15, we're going to quickly go over that.
Yeah.
Okay, so page 13 is a behavior matrix that's there to help you kind of as a guideline of what to do. So if you observe a problem behavior, Obviously, if it's an emergency, you're going to call your flagship coordinator, or one of you guys is going to run down and contact us. But you're going to use those proactive cues like Becky was talking about, the teacher or mom look, redirection, verbal warning, standing next to them. And then if that behavior continues and it's minor, you're going to use those logical consequences we talked about. And then if it still continues, you're going to refer to those behavior management scenarios that you had in your manual and that you just practiced. And then if it continues, you're going to bring them to us, okay? Because you really don't have to deal with that. That's going too far. If it doesn't continue, great. You did something right with correcting the behavior, and just continue to do that if needed. If it's a major behavior, immediately bring them to us, and then we'll decide on the consequence. On the back side of that page, there's kind of the major and minor infractions. And you can read over those and kind of be familiar with those. And then sometimes if you bring the student to us, we might do an FDR form or a flagship discipline referral form. So this is similar to the school's office discipline referral form. And once a student gets 3 of these, they're out of the program, okay? So you won't have to fill this out, but you can be there to help us fill it out with the student to kind of clarify a story. Or if it's chaotic in your program, you can go back to your program and we'll complete this with the student. But we'll make up the decision of if we're gonna fill one of these out or not, okay? Are there any questions about the matrix or the discipline referral form? Okay.
All right, so next up on page 11, we have top 10 behavior management tips. So you can take a look at that. That's a good reference sheet for you for how to conduct your classroom management. We're not going to go over it right now, but please go through and read that. Next up on page 12, we have the top 10 student engagement tips. And again, go through on your own time and read these. Some of these will probably work better with junior high students than high school students. But usually the high school students, I think, are generally pretty engaged. You don't have to do as many games to get their attention. Junior high might be a different story. And then if you go ahead and look at page 18, if you look between pages 18 and 20, it's just a compilation of characteristics of the different age groups that you guys will be middle school and high school, so you would be more page 19 and page 20. Maybe it's been a while since you've been away from junior high students, so this is a good refresher for you. Most of you guys, I think, are going to school right now at the university, so you may be more familiar with the characteristics of 14 to 18-year-olds, but especially if you're working with junior high, I recommend you go through and look at those characteristics of the 9 to 12-year-olds. And just as a reminder, high school people, look at those 14 to 18-year-old characteristics.
All right. So that is what we have for you tonight. Was there any questions? If you have it on the sheet, you can pass it forward. Otherwise, you can always just ask as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Becky, we need one more.
We got 2.
Did you have a question?
There's a few more.
Oh, sorry.
No other questions?